My friends are my power.
Non-binary pals and nerds everywhere. Welcome back to Nerd Explosion, the weekly podcast where based on a monthly theme, we nerd out about whatever we want. I'm Cameron.
I'm Kate.
And today is going to be a little different because this time I have a true crime story to tell. And it's one that a lot of people already know, but I figured we could give our own thoughts and feelings on it. For those who do not know, there was a recent documentary that came out called Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV. And it featured a lot of older Nickelodeon stars, like people who appeared on All of That and, all those kind of shows back in the day, and their experiences with some of the more darker things that went on back in the day, more specifically stuff having to do with a Mr. Dan Schneider and Brian Peck. So I figured we could just give our thoughts on that. But before we get into that, new episodes of this podcast come out every Saturday. Do all the things, do all the stuff. You know what to do. But, Kate, do you want to crack into it? You've been waiting patiently. Get it? There it goes.
I just really wanted to sip my Sprite. That's all that was.
You're just waiting there in anticipation for us to record. You're like, come on, I want to drink. Just let me drink my thing.
I have a crispy Sprite and I wanted to sip it.
But I suppose before we get really into it, what do you know about this whole situation, whether with Dan Schneider or just anything related to it?
Well, I know I've always thought Dan Schneider was a creep, but he just gives off like those vibes.
Yeah.
I know that Jeanette McCurdy had some things to say about him in her book.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, oh gosh, what was her name? There was a young actress on the set of Zoe 101 that said that Dan Schneider would pick, quote, favorites, and whoever was like the favorite actress that week got like special treatment or whatever, and that Jamie Lynn Spears ended up like being like a hardcore bully towards her because Dan like manipulated them against each other, kind of things of that nature. I mean, and aside from that, just like what I've seen on my TikTok For You page.
But I suppose to give people kind of a rundown, in case, you've been living under a rock for the past, decade plus and don't know who Dan Schneider is, he is or was a producer, screenwriter, and actor. This is straight from Wikipedia.
Oh, he was an actor?
Yeah, he appeared. I didn't know that either until I did all this research. I saw a clip of a show he was in. According to Wikipedia, he is known for creating and producing a string of successful children's shows on Nickelodeon from 1994 to 2019. In recent years, since 2018, he has faced significant media coverage and controversy regarding numerous allegations of inappropriate behavior, as well as other misconduct allegations. Let's see. I'm trying to scroll down to when he got booted. So, like everybody knows, he created shows like or he helped produce / create shows like All That, Good Burger, Tina and Kel, Amanda Show, Zoe 101, iCarly, Henry Danger, Drake and Josh. He basically was responsible for a lot of those shows. And the actor side of it, he was, in 1986, he played a character named Dennis Blunden in a ABC sitcom Head of the Class. And it's a series that ran for 5 seasons from 1986 to 1981. And apparently in 93, he was in a series called Home Free. Let's see. Yeah, he was from 1993 to 2019, basically. He was considered a Nickelodeon showrunner because he helped create a lot of shows for Nickelodeon until March 26th of 2018. Nickelodeon announced it would not be extending its production deal with Schneider and his company, Schneider's Bakery. In addition, the network also announced that his comedy Game Shakers would not be renewed for a 4th season. His remaining Nickelodeon comedy, Henry Danger, would be receiving a 5th season and a new showrunner. I actually screenshotted the statement Nickelodeon put out when they released him. Following many conversations together about next directions and future opportunities, Nickelodeon and our long-term creative partner, Dan Schneider / Schneider's Bakery, have agreed not to extend the current deal. Since several Schneider's Bakery projects are wrapping up, both sides agreed that this is a natural time for Nickelodeon and Schneider's Bakery to pursue other opportunities and projects. Going back to the Wikipedia, let's see. After a 3-year hiatus, Schneider announced he had several new projects in development. The New York Times commented that he seemed, quote, set on returning to television and reintroducing his brand of comedy to new audiences. In a June 2021 interview, he described an, quote, ambitious and very different television pilot that he had written and sold to a different network. Schneider said that this proposed show is aimed at more of an adult audience than his previous work. Now, it's funny I read that he's like, oh, it's aimed more at an adult audience than his, previous work. Mm-hmm. Even though he littered most of his projects with sexual innuendos that were not appropriate at the time.
Right.
And so I actually watched, the guy who played Tebow on iCarly did an interview with him recently.
Was that, okay, just so I can put the image in my head, was that the guy that always had like the stick of bagels or something?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So he recently, just a day ago or so, he interviewed Dan Schneider and asked him all these different questions. And Dan Schneider, in the thing, he was asked about the sexual innuendos and stuff. Mm-hmm. And Dan Schneider, he said something about it, see if I have it in my notes, but he said something about it not being inappropriate. Basically, it's like, oh, if I didn't see it as inappropriate, but blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you knew damn well what you were doing, right, my dude. Also, there were some things in the interview that I took from that Dan Schneider said. Because, first of all, in this whole interview, he starts off the start of the interview and be like, I made some bad decisions in the past. If I could go back, I would change stuff. I want to apologize to everybody. And I'm like, I can't tell if he's being sincere or not. That's the thing. I don't know if he's being... I think he's... And somebody else...
My guess is, to quote... Cut this out if I'm incorrect, but my guess is, to quote Rihanna, you're not sorry, you're just sorry you got caught.
That's kind of the thing, too. It's like, a lot of people... There are a couple of people I've seen have the same point, that basically think he's just trying to gaslight everybody, because he's seen how much coverage that this whole documentary's gotten, and he's like, oh, I want to apologize to everybody, and...
We'll get into it later, but there was a connection between him and Brian Peck that just fucking was wild to me.
That's the other thing in the interview. And he says, he claims in this interview, he didn't hire Brian Peck. And I'm like, okay, if that's the case, you still worked with him. You still worked very closely with him, according to multiple sources. Another thing I took away from this interview he did, he says that he wishes the actors in these shows would have told him they were uncomfortable with stuff. And he's like, I didn't want to create a bad environment. If something was going wrong, they should have told me. And I'm like, but my dude, you were responsible for some of this uncomfiness. But you were the cause of 90% of it. Because multiple people had said that he had a temper problem.
Yep.
There was the alleged foot fetish, which I don't know if it's actually true or not, but there's definitely a lot of evidence pointing towards him having a foot fetish.
And
because you look at multiple episodes of iCarly and Victorious, there are plenty that feature feet as a prominent part of an episode.
Also, if you have a foot fetish, to each your own, but maybe not in a kid's show.
Maybe not to with
minors,
kid actors. One they brought up, because I watched this video on, and by the way, listeners, I recommend this video. Just look up Dan Schneider, Blame It on Jorge. That's Jorge Jorge. He did a really good video talking about Dan Schneider and the whole thing. But he brought up the whole thing with the foot fetish, and there was for example, there was an episode of Victorious that he was also the creator for the show. And there was an episode of Victorious where Victoria was doing dares on this, I forget what the in-universe website was. But basically, she would post the episode, she was posting videos asking people to dare to do stuff. And in the episode, I guess somebody asked her to put ketchup on her feet. and do a dance or whatever. And I'm like, there's so many, like, there was another one where...
There's a lot wrong with that.
There was a lot with Kat, Ariana Grande's character. There was one where she did the same thing, but her dare was to put her big toe in her mouth. Mm-hmm. Like, there was just a lot of weird foot stuff with Dan Schneider.
It's not necessarily a foot thing, but since you brought up Ariana Grande, there's also, like, behind-the-scenes footage of her, like, scenes, I think, that were cut out.
There's actually... I think I know what you mean, but...
The one where she's pouring water on herself?
Yep. Yeah. Somebody brought that up, too, when I looked at
like,
that. And
I think she was, like... And, again, I don't know for sure, but I think she was, like, 16 when they were filming that.
She probably
like
was.
She was under 18 for sure.
But it's still a lot of people.
And either way, it's gross.
A lot of people are like, yeah, that's creepy Dan Schneider all over again. There was another thing with in this interview, Tebow brought up that I forget the guy's real name, so I'm just gonna call him Tebow. He brought up a thing of like salary and stuff, like all these different male writers had a salary, but then there was like women. There was a couple women writers that had to share a salary. And I guess he said to these two women writers something along the lines of, hey, if you're willing to share the salary, you guys can get the job. And I'm like, okay, well, he goes on like, oh, I did that with male workers too. I'm like, yeah, but you could have started with that or just said like, I did that with a few people instead of, saying like, hey, I went to these two women writers and say, hey, how about you guys split your salary while these other people, get their own salaries.
Bobby K. Bowman.
Who's that?
Tebow.
Bobby K. Bowman. Okay.
He goes by Boogie.
Booty. Okay. Yeah, I think he introduced himself as that. So Booty. But yeah, there was a whole thing of like, I guess he was accused of treating women unfairly, and he said that the example of the two women writers that had to split a salary. Mm-hmm. And he tried to save his own ass by being like, oh, well, I told that to two male writers, too.
Okay, so not only are you sexist and a pig, but you're also a terrible boss. And not willing to pay your employees a single salary. Got it.
So here's the funny thing.
Keep digging that grave, Schneider.
So here's the funny thing about the whole Dan Schneider thing. There was another TikTok I saw where a guy was talking, sharing information that his representatives share because they released a statement on his behalf. And in my notes, I put it as Dan's representative released a statement on his behalf, basically blaming everyone else for sexualizing the content that, happened and creating problems that weren't there.
Ah, yes. The classic gaslighter move.
So basically,
it's everybody else.
So basically, his representatives came out and were like, "Hey, it's not our fault that everyone else is, sexualizing this stuff and seeing problems that aren't there." Like,
see, and here's the thing: if everybody else is seeing it, it's because it exists. It's because you put it there intentionally. Exactly.
Kind of focusing on this quiet on set thing. Now, I found this thing from Forbes magazine or Forbes.com. Mm-hmm. Now, listeners, keep in mind that I haven't seen fully Quiet on Set yet. I've seen like quite a few clips here and there.
I've watched damn near the whole thing on TikTok.
Because people are going to put the whole thing on TikTok. But like I said, I've seen clips here and there, and Forbes.com released this article that's like, 7 revelations from Quiet on Set. So the first one being, the documentary had several inspirations. Let's see who's referencing. This is basically, includes stuff from like Jeanette McCurdy's memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Which is on the top of my TBR list.
The directors of this documentary reached out to multiple people for interviews. The Amanda Show spurred a lawsuit over gender discrimination. The program starring young Amanda Bynes, who had just two female writers, Jenny Killian and Christy Stratton, who say they were forced to split a single salary for their work. So these are the women I was talking about. Killian says in the documentary that she was forced to watch pornography, and that Stratton, who was fired after one season, once presented an idea at the writer's table while someone pretended to sodomize her. Tilden later filed a gender discrimination lawsuit against Schneider's production company, alleging she didn't receive equal pay. The suit was settled. All that, cast members felt uncomfortable with their stunts. Brian Hearn, who was on All That for 2 seasons, detailed stunts and costumes that made him feel uncomfortable, including one scene in which a dog licked peanut butter put all over his body. Another actor wore a tight-fitting costume with what some described as phallic symbols. Now, I actually watched this clip, Brian Hearn. I guess there was a stint in All That where he was Noseboy, a superhero. So he had a big prosthetic nose on him and stuff on his, noses on his shoulders, but they did not look like noses.
They look like straight up cock and balls.
They straight up look like penises.
Yeah.
And there was one part in this skit where he sneezed on this woman and she had a big glop of stuff on her face. And in this documentary, somebody's like,
snot.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Like in this documentary, this person described it as it's a cum shot joke.
Right.
In a kid's show, which, I mean, again, going back to the whole thing with the representatives, they're like, oh, people are just sexualized cousins seeing things that aren't there. I'm like, you tell me that's not what was intended.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't
what
sit
you're
there
doing.
and tell me that was not what was intended. Let's see. Some of the wildest conspiracy theories aren't true. They work diligently to separate fact from fiction. They found a production assistant, Jason Handy, who was convicted for child abuse and child pornography in 2004, who worked on set with many kids. Like in this documentary, they're trying to separate, okay, what is actually true that people are saying?
What actually happened versus speculation, yeah.
Many were eager to tell their stories, yeah. I'm not going to go over the full thing, but if you want to watch this documentary and see for yourself, there are a lot of things that come up, and it's just sad to see what happened with all these actors. But going back to Dan Schneider, again, he was basically described as creepy. He had a temper issue. I guess multiple people had come out and said that he was very touchy with the kids. And while he's not I don't think he did anything criminal, to land him in jail. He was definitely not someone you would want to be around.
Right.
To me, kind of looking at videos he took on set, because there are plenty of videos out there from his phone or wherever, where he's filming actors on set and talking to them and just be like, hey guys, hey, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. To me, he gives off one of those creepy guys that would come out to a group of girls and be like, hey, where's my hug? That's what
those in high school.
That's the kind of guy Dan Schneider looks like to me.
Yeah.
And also going back to this recent interview, seeing him now, he's looking rough. My God, dude. But it's another thing that kind of came up with this whole thing is a lot of people were paid hush money to not talk about Dan Schneider.
Well, I know there was a couple actresses who signed an NDA, and that finally, after so many people came out, they were able to get out of it, and they were able to tell their story too. But I'm like, that's crazy fucked up that that to me says that you know full well what you're doing is wrong, because you're sign this paper agreement saying that you won't talk about it, or I can sue, the fact that you're making these people sign a non-disclosure agreement in the first place, red flag.
Exactly. Before I get too far ahead, I do want to mention this other guy who, looking into this stuff, I think is definitely worse than Dan Schneider.
Oh, I have some opinions about this situation too.
And that's saying a lot. Brian Peck, Brian Richard Peck is an American actor, dialogue coach, director, producer, and convicted sex offender. He's known he was Pickle Boy on All That, and later for All That became a dialogue coach. And he also did work for Boy Meets World, Growing Pains, and The Amanda Show. Going down, he was arrested on August 19th, 2003 for lewd conduct with a minor, being initially charged with 11 counts. In March 2024, on the Investigation Discovery documentary series Twine on Set, it was revealed that Nickelodeon star Drake Bell, whom Peck worked with, was one of his victims, In 2004, Peck was convicted of 2 counts and was sentenced to serve 16 months in prison and register as a sex offender. After his release, he was hired to work on the Disney Channel teen sitcom The Suite Life of Zack and Cody. He did voiceover work for 3 episodes, but was later fired after Disney Channel executives learned of his conviction, and his voice lines and on-screen credit were replaced. He was never on set nor interacted with the show's cast or crew. He lives in Los Angeles, California as of 2024, and has not worked in the entertainment industry since 2019. Good. Mm-hmm. Fuck him.
So here's what's crazy to me about this situation.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, let me say off the bat, I don't like Drake Bell.
I mean,
I really sympathize.
I used to not like Drake Bell either, but given all the stuff that's happened with him...
No, hear me out. I sympathize with what he went through. I don't think anybody should ever have to go through that point blank period, but because you're a victim does not give you the right or authority to turn around and victimize somebody else. Because at the end of the day, that is exactly what he did to that girl. Well, and he even says in the documentary, being a victim doesn't give you the right to hurt other people. And it's like, okay, she was 17, my guy. Like, if genuinely she told him she was above 18 and he found out later she wasn't, that's a whole nother thing.
Mm-hmm.
But until that's proven, I'm going to believe her over him every day of the week.
Speaking of Drake Bell, I actually saved a thing from the documentary where he talks about Brian Peck, just spam calling him at his girlfriend's house,
mm-hmm.
to the point where his girlfriend's mom had to intervene and basically like, hey, what's going on?
And then I got a girlfriend, and I was basically spending all of my time at my girlfriend's house. There was this time that I was at her house, and Brian had planned to take me to Disneyland. I was like, this is not happening. I'm not going. No. And Brian's calling my cell phone nonstop. I was just ignoring it. Well, he started calling my girlfriend's house non-stop. I mean, over and over and over and over. Finally, her mom answered and brought it to me. And he's like, what are you doing? We had plans. People are watching me on the phone. So I just played it off as like, I must have made double plans, but I'm gonna hang here tonight. And he got really upset. And I hung up the phone. And he started calling back and calling back. My girlfriend's mom said, hey Drake, can I talk to you in the kitchen for a second? She shuts the door behind me, so it's just the two of us. She's like, what's going on? And I go, oh yeah, Brian, we had plans. She goes, no. A 40-something-year-old man does not call my daughter's boyfriend like that. The worst part.
And there's another part too where they actually have his dad in the documentary too, and
that part was hard to watch because
basically Brian Peck was, or what is said in the documentary is that Brian Peck was like, okay, well I want Drake to myself, so I'm gonna try to sneakily try to drive a wedge between Drake and his dad,
mm-hmm.
because Drake Bell's dad was his manager.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little while, like, when they were talking with his dad was like, yeah, I tried to do what I can to prevent Brian from showing up. Because Drake said that he did a lot of concerts because he had a band at the time, too, when he was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian Peck would just show up to every one of them. Because he said that, like, if he had a concert close enough to where Dan Schneider was, Dan Schneider would come to the concert. But that's it. Like, if it was close to Dan Schneider, then Dan Schneider would do his concert.
Yeah.
But Brian Peck went to pretty much every single one of his concerts, like no matter where he was.
And the fact that when Brian Peck was eventually arrested, Drake, and he talks about this in the documentary, and his dad touches on it too, but he was like, I called my dad and I was like, did you see that they got him? Like, they arrested him. And the first thing his dad said to him was, thank God he didn't get a chance to get to you.
Mm-hmm.
And Drake was like, in that moment, I couldn't tell him. Like, how was I supposed to explain
Well, yeah. I mean,
And like I said,
that's the hardest
I
thing. Like, how do you
sympathize-
explain that?
I sympathize with him, and I feel terrible that he was put in that position and felt like he couldn't do anything about it. But at the same time, like, that doesn't change the fact that you then turned around, and I'm not saying that he deserves it, because nobody deserves that. But like, let's not forget.
There have been,
You know what I mean?
There have been plenty of people that, well, like, analyze that too, like the fact that he went through this, but he also did the same thing. And there are a lot of people that are saying that, you know, not that they condone it, but it makes a little more sense.
It does. And to be fair, we don't know the whole story there.
Mm-hmm.
If she truly did, and I'm not victim blaming, I want to say that up top, but if she truly did, if she was like, no, I'm 19, and then it turns out she's 17 and he genuinely did not know that, that is a completely different circumstance.
Yeah.
But what floored me the most is that after Dan Schneider found out that, I believe it was after the news broke that he had been arrested, and because Drake was a minor at the time, his name was not released.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he said in the documentary that was one of the things that he was the most scared about. He was like, I don't want people to know that it was me. I don't want people to know that I turned him in, or, you know, whatever.
I think the thing he said too is that Dan Schneider kind of knew. Yeah,
so Dan Schneider called him and was like, did you have anything to do with this, or were you involved in any way? And Drake said, yeah. Or he's something about, are you the minor that they're talking about, or whatever? And Drake said, yeah. And Dan said, okay, you don't have to talk about it again. Are you okay? Do you need anything from me? And Drake was like, he was so ready to be there for me. And I was like, that fucking spun me, because look at all the shit he was doing at that time.
Well, yeah, because a lot of people, you know, from the outside, not knowing anything else, would be like, oh, he actually cares about him and wants to spend time with him. No.
And I'm sure part of that is true. I'm sure there was a level of genuine concern.
But given everything else he's done, it could also be seen as like, oh, I want to get him on my side, because let's see,
Right.
I'm the good guy.
Right.
It's fucking crazy. Speaking on Drake Bell, going back to my notes here, excuse me. You know, obviously a lot of people were talking about his whole thing coming out, and one other thing that came out recently is another child star that is in a little bit of trouble because they decided to make jokes about the whole situation.
Oh, are we talking about Josh Peck?
Well, I'll get to him too, but Devin Werkheiser.
Oh,
You
Devin,
know-
keep your fucking mouth shut, dog.
You know, from Ned's Declassified. They were I think they were live on TikTok or something, and Devin Werkheiser made some jokes about the thing. Actually, I might have a clip somewhere in here of exactly what he said. Oh yeah, here it is.
Daniel, we told you never to speak about that. Get back in your hole, Daniel, and give me your holes. Sorry, we shouldn't joke about this.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't have, Devin,
You
because
really shouldn't
now you're
joke
in deep
about it.
shit. He actually released an apology, because of course he did,
Well, yeah. His PR team was probably all over that.
and he put it on Twitter. He's like, I was being an idiot today. No way around it. I feel horrible that my dumb ass was even speaking about this without seeing it. I watched Quiet on Set tonight, and I'm horrified by the gravity of what Drake and others shared. Truly heartbroken over what my fellow actors went through. I can't believe they weren't protected. I'm sorry for compounding any hurt. And, let's see. He captioned the post, so sorry to Drake, gutted I hurt you. And the whole thing with that, it's like, if you're truly that sorry, why did you make the joke in the first place?
Right.
You know this is a sensitive subject.
I can understand a momentary lapse in judgment if you truly had no idea, but you worked with Dan yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have female co-stars and female actresses.
Was he? I gotta look that up, because I don't know if Dan Schneider was heavily involved in Ned's Declassified.
I don't think he was directly involved, but I think Dan Schneider had a little bit of his fingers in every pot.
There's let's see, Ned's Declassified. No, it was created by Scott Fellows, so he didn't necessarily have a lot to do with it.
No, but
he
was,
worked in the same atmosphere.
Yeah, and a lot of those actors and actresses commingled, so you had to have heard whispers.
Well, plus the thing is, the Ned's Declassified crew have several problems of their own.
Yeah, they do, actually.
There's rumors, I don't know if anything is officially confirmed, but there's rumors that they were messing around with each other during filming.
Oh, no, that's confirmed. They full on admitted that on their podcast.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Well, of course they admitted it on their podcast. And that's another TikTok I saw too, talking about their podcast, and I listened to like maybe one episode back when they first started, but I haven't listened since, and it's honestly a good thing because they're just really cringy. They're just...
I still think they're stuck in the mid-aughts.
I think it's actually this video I saw.
Sexually assaulted in
Yeah.
Partners in Crime, one of your co-star, one of your
Okay, I'll let this play.
that one of your partners in crime, one of your co-stars, Drake Bell, got sexually assaulted and raped, and now all you can do is try to make jokes and talk about, man, I'm sorry, that's not funny. So why the fuck you said the joke then?
By the way, this is a TikTok creator by the name of The Midnight Drop.
If this is the way to get their podcast canceled, fine. Let's just call it a day and get these motherfuckers off the internet. Make them go back to obscurity. I love Ned's Declassified. I was one of my favorite shows as a kid, but every single time these three mofos come on my screen, bro, their vibes are just so cringy and stupid. And it's like they are trying way too hard. Like way too hard. I mean, not even that. Like every time they get on their podcast, they just be talking about things that I gave no consent on. No consent. Why is there even a podcast about the show? There should have only been a 5-episode minimum, and that's it. That should have been it. But you continue to do this because you're mad that you didn't get a revival show. And if you thought you was gonna get a revival show, think again, this shit ain't happening. You know how Nickelodeon is trying to make sure they ain't doing nothing wrong. They ain't gonna give you the shit after this. You know what? Just to spite y'all, they should reboot Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, and they should cut you guys off from the show just to spite y'all and all y'all dumbassery. This is stupid. Stupid. Like I
Pretty much said what I think.
Yeah.
Like, if they were going to do a podcast together related to the show, it should have been a 5-episode minimum. But they're continuing to do stuff and just being like, hey, here's some shitty things we did while we were on the show.
Yeah, it's just like, first of all, no one cares. No one asked. Go away.
Exactly. But I kind of want to go back to a point that I brought up with the hush money for people, you know, that they try to give people money to not talk about Dan Schneider. And then I think there might have been some people that took it. I don't know who exactly, but one person that definitely didn't take it was Jeanette McCurdy. This is a quote from her book, her memoir. I'm glad
my mom is dead.
I'm glad my mom is dead. In the book, she says, Nickelodeon is offering me $300,000 in hush money to not talk publicly about my experience on the show, my personal experience of the creator's abuse. By the way, in the book, she refers to, it's not really confirmed, but she mentions the creator a lot. And it's pretty...
She talks... It's implied that she talks about Dan Schneider, but she never actually says Dan Schneider.
Yeah, I think by saying the creator, that's who she means. This is a network with shows made for children. Shouldn't they have some sort of moral compass? Shouldn't they at least try to report to some ethical standard? Some sort of ethical standard? So she pretty much is come out and said that, like, yeah, I didn't take the money. Because... you know, why should she? You know, why should she keep quiet about something?
And she did the smart thing by not naming him by name, because now he can't come after her for defamation.
Yeah.
Because if he does, she can be like, prove it was you. Also, she suffered a lot. I mean, she was struggling with an eating disorder, and they made her character one who doesn't stop eating.
Can I just say props to Jeanette McCurdy, though?
I love her.
You know, before she couldn't come out about the stuff because she was scared, but now that she has I feel like she has a new freedom to fully talk about stuff, and she realizes that with that freedom now, she's not gonna pull her punches.
Right.
Like, she's going straight for the jugular when she can.
Mm-hmm. I know Maddie has a copy of that book, and I'm gonna steal it from her.
I should read it too.
I should have her bring it
seems-
down when she comes down for Easter.
Actually, I think there is a audiobook out there that she narrated, which I might try to check out. But speaking on the hush money, there's somebody that, while not confirmed to have taken it, a lot of people have speculated that they have. And that person is Josh Peck. Because...
Honestly, that would not surprise me. Josh Peck is low-key kind of a piece of shit.
Because, I mean, he's especially in a lot of hot water now because of the whole thing with Drake Bell. And he's saying nothing about it. There's a whole thing where I guess a lot of people have tried to ask him stuff about Drake. And as soon as they ask the question, Josh has blocked them right away. Like, he's blocking people left and right for asking him about Drake. And it's just like, okay, like, if you don't want to talk publicly about it, you don't have to. But you could also, you blocking people like this left and right is not a good look.
Well, and the other thing that makes me think that he is holding something close to the vest, whether or not he took the hush money is debatable, but I'm inclined to believe that he did. The fact that he tried to gaslight us all to make us believe that Drake was the crazy one. Do you remember when that whole shit went down about Drake not being invited to the wedding?
Yeah, and also, he didn't invite Drake to the wedding, but you know who was invited? Dan Schneider.
And then Josh, because there was a while there where everybody was like hashtag Team Josh because he really let us believe that Drake was unhinged. When in reality, he was dealing with an unconceivable amount of trauma.
Exactly.
And because he even said in the documentary, because he said that Brian Peck first originally auditioned to play the dad, and Drake was like, absolutely fucking not, because Drake and Josh was like his safe space, because that was the one place where he could be away from Brian.
Yeah, because Drake and Josh wasn't part of it during the whole trial thing, and then the rest of the series was like after the fact.
I think so, yeah.
Because, what is it, 2003?
Do you have some opinions, Mochi?
Mochi, stop headbutting the microphone.
Stop it.
Stop it. But, I lost my train of thought.
Again.
Oh my god, Mochi. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so, like, this whole thing with Brian Peck and Drake Bell and stuff, everything was happening pretty much during the filming of Drake and Josh. And yeah, there was a whole thing for a while, like, where Josh Peck trying to make everyone believe that Drake was the crazy one, that he was, he had all these issues, when really Josh Peck was the one basically trying to control this narrative.
Right.
And the thing that really bothers me about Josh Peck is, like, yeah, sure, Drake is most definitely guilty.
Well,
but
he was convicted and sentenced to probation, so at least according to the government, he's guilty.
To me, it seems like Josh Peck is trying to ride on that and be like, oh, see, I'm not the shitty one. Look at what he's doing compared to what I'm doing.
Right, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying that because Drake went through this, he should be excused of any crimes he may or may not have committed. That's not at all what I think.
Because the thing is, he still committed those, whether, you like it or not. But
the fact of the matter is, you cannot sit here and tell me that he's crazy and that he's the problem and that he blew up unfairly because he wasn't invited to your wedding, when he, in all actuality, he was just hurt because the one person he thought he could depend on completely abandoned him.
Exactly, yeah.
And he's dealing with God knows what kind of trauma. I mean, if you read the things that Brian Peck was convicted of, horrific abuse.
Yeah.
So no, I don't sympathize with the fact that I don't feel bad that he was convicted, that Drake Bell was convicted or sentenced to probation, because I think that he deserves that. However, I can separate that from the horrific amount of trauma and the years of abuse that he suffered. And I can still feel bad about that. And nobody should have to go through that ever.
Obviously, he shouldn't have to go through what he did.
No. And he
no one should have to.
And he shouldn't have felt like couldn't turn to anyone either. I really feel bad that he suffered in silence for so long because he felt like he couldn't, and these are his own words, I'm not speculating or anything, but he felt that he didn't have anywhere to turn to and that nothing was going to make it better or make it stop. So
speaking of Drake Bell and how he feels about Josh, there was a weird, from his TikTok, there's a video he put out just today addressing Josh.
Hey, what's up, guys? I just want to clear something up. I've noticed a lot of comments on some of Josh's TikToks and some of his posts, and I just want to let you guys know that this is really, processing this and going through this is a really emotional time, and a lot of it's very, very difficult. So not everything is put out to the public, but I just want you guys to know that he has reached out to me, and it's been very sensitive, but he has reached out to talk with me and help me work through this, and has been really, really great. So I just wanted to let you guys know that and to take it a little easy on him.
So in that,
okay, that surprises me a little bit, I'll be honest.
So to that, basically, Drake is saying like, "Hey, Josh has reached out to me. I'm not going to say I'm not going to disclose what he's saying, but he's basically addressing the rumors where people have been like, oh, Josh has been a little quiet, been too quiet about this." Mm-hmm. Drake is like, actually, he has reached out to me, and obviously he doesn't have to share what they've talked about, because if it's a personal thing, then that just stay between them. And to be fair,
I still think Josh Peck is a piece of shit.
I mean, he's friends with David Dobrik, so that's all you need to know.
My personal opinion. But I do know that as a child actor, as an actor, he has always kept his life more private than most. So I guess it shouldn't surprise me that he reached out privately and that he hasn't said anything publicly, but he's also kind of like making jokes about the whole situation too. So
I mean, not as bad as Mr. Werkheiser.
Well, no, but so I recently read, this has nothing to do with it, but just since we were talking about Jennette McCurdy, I recently read, oh God, what is that? Matthew Perry's bibliography.
You should know the title.
Love, Friends, and the Big Terrible Thing, I think.
Don't you have the book?
No, it's my mom's.
Oh.
But I read that, and I want to read Jennette's biography too, because it's just the insane amount of behind the scenes shit that nobody knew about. Not that anything nefarious happened on the set of Friends, but just like the fact that they almost didn't have a second season. Mm-hmm. Or they almost the show almost didn't go on because David Schwimmer went into the writers and producers and was like, hey, we should all be making the same amount of money. It's crazy that I'm making more than everybody else when we're all equally part of this. And it's just like, what else is going on in Hollywood that we don't know about? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's why these documentaries, just like Quantum said, are so important. Because it finally gives these people opportunity to be like, hey, these are the shitty things that went on, and we're finally
exactly, because
stories.
I always kind of knew that Dan Schneider was a creep. I don't know how I knew that. I just did.
I mean, it's been pretty well known.
But I had no idea who Brian Peck was.
And yeah, I didn't know a lot about him either before I went into all this and before all this stuff came out. But now that I know, I'm like, oh my God, they're like, what these people went through. I think I sent you a TikTok of this, actually. I might have. I don't know. But another thing from the Twilight on Set documentary. Let me look for it, because I was like, as soon as I saw this, I was just like,
is that the one that was like Liz trying to avoid Dan on set?
No, not that one, but that's another one too that I sent you, because I was just like, It's actually, because that one I sent you is one of the videos that Dan Schneider took. He was filming kind of in between takes on the set of Victorious, and while Victoria Justice greeted him, and the other guy, I forget the actor's name, was they were talking to him. The one actor who Liz was just turned away from him for most of the video, and only interacted with them when she was basically, she felt kind of forced to.
Yeah. Which is bananagrams, if you ask me.
I really
Your actors shouldn't have to feel that way.
Right? If you're, the actor shouldn't have to shy away from a show's creator. Like, you should be able to create a safe work environment for all your actors. And, like he claimed that he wanted to do.
Right.
In the recent interview, he claimed he wanted to do that and be like, I want to create a safe work environment. I'm like, okay, then why didn't you?
Then why did you literally do everything in your power to make that not happen?
Literally, like, I don't think it's that hard to create a safe work environment. Just don't be a creepy piece of shit.
Right.
Like, my God, like, it's not that hard to make your actors feel safe. Just, don't be a creep and make sure that they're getting, everything they need and, hear out their concerns.
Well, and like I said, like, you were actively going out of your way to make your, especially female actors, feel so crazy uncomfortable. And then to turn around in the same breath and talk to Drake and be like, are you okay? Do you need anything from me? What can I do? Like, you don't ever have to talk about this again. Like, I'm here for you. We're going to get through this. Like, you can't have it both ways, my guy. Pick a lane. And I don't mean to make light of the situation, but like, how can both of those things exist in one person? I just don't understand that.
At the time, I think it was about like 2.5 years in, everyone went to Brian's house for a barbecue, and his house was a little off. He had a room that was just dedicated to like vintage toys and comic books, and he'd converted his garage into like a Planet of the Apes shrine. I noticed a painting in the room that stuck out to me because it had nothing to do with Planet of the Apes. It was of a birthday clown holding balloons. And Brian got very excited when I asked him about it. He flipped the thing around, and on the back it said, "To Brian, I hope you enjoy the painting. Best wishes, your friend, John Wayne Gacy." It was a self-portrait of a serial killer, John Wayne Gacy. At this point, I'm like 14. I didn't know like the details, but I knew like this guy's a serial killer who like killed a lot of young men and boys. My instinct was like, everyone has to see this. And so like all the parents and the kids come into the room, and then Brian presents the painting again. And Brian actually developed a pen pal relationship with John. He kept like this pile of letters and photos from John Wayne Gacy in his nightstand next to his bed. And he like pulls them out and starts showing them to me. Your instinct is to give someone the benefit of the doubt. If you've known them for that long, even in the face of like this really bad sign. It was one of those like classic failures of group psychology.
Yeah, that whole thing had me floored. Especially the fact that Brian Peck was excited.
I was going to say, the fact that he was geeked about it should tell you
everything.
He was excited
to show all the stuff. And he said that like even like the parents came into the room and Brian Peck continued to show this stuff off. Like, my dude, you're getting all excited about sharing your pen pal relationship with a serial killer. Like, that, if that wasn't a sign that Brian Peck was a fucked up individual, I don't know what else was.
Literally.
Like, my God.
He had pen pals with a literal prolific serial killer.
I really have no idea what else to say about this whole thing. I know they did mention Amanda Bynes, and honestly, I feel like they did her dirty. Like, she should have been treated so much better than she did, than she got treated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Dan Schneider allegedly said that during this dark time when she was trying to be emancipated from her parents, he wanted to be a shoulder to cry on and offered her like sanctuary at like his place or whatever.
Real quick, just as long as we were on the subject, John Wayne Gacy has 33 confirmed victims, estimated to be up upwards of 100 or more.
Yeah, that's not exactly someone to be, date to be my friend.
Also, I want to know when this picture situation happened, because Gacy was executed, I believe. But he died at 94.
Well, Kyle Sullivan said that, like, at the time, like, he had known about John Wayne Gacy. I don't know if he was... I don't know exactly the time frame because I didn't see, like, the full thing, but Kyle Sullivan, he was a child at this point. So it was either, before or after. He was... Well, he said that Brian Peck was a pen pal, so I'm assuming John Wayne Gacy was still around at the time.
I wonder if they met, if he just, like, decided to send him a message while he was in prison, or if they had known, if he had known that Gacy outside of, like, before, in the before time.
It could possibly be, or maybe it's the fact that he's so messed up in the head that he became friends with him after everything had come out.
He was like, I also like to abuse young boys.
Said, hey, you're fucked up just like I am. Let's be friends.
That might be more realistic, because now that I think about it, I think Gacy was in Michigan or Wisconsin. Now I don't have to look it up. It's going to bug me.
But kind of going back to Amanda Bynes, like, yeah, she's just... Like, if you can see, like, there are random videos...
Illinois.
There are random videos of her now. Like, I just, I saw a TikTok of hers the other day about her wanting to become a nail tech or everything. But just looking at her now, like, I think she changed her name at one point because she was trying to escape everything. Like, she changed her name to Ashley Banks, I believe.
Mm-hmm. That sounds right.
But just looking at her, I'm like, my God, like, what do they do to you?
There has to be some undiagnosed trauma there too, because she really seems like she's gone off the deep end.
Yeah, she did for a while, and looking at stuff now, like what she went through, especially the stuff, Dan Schneider and everything, a lot of it makes sense onto why she is the way she is. Mm-hmm. Because she went through this traumatic experience that no one should ever have to go through.
Abuse like that will change a person for sure.
It's just, my God, like, definitely, like, you can see looking at her that she went through some pretty messed up stuff.
It's the eyes. It's that.
It's the eyes.
Like, you can see she's kind of got that 1,000-yard stare. Like, she's there, but emotionally and mentally, she's years ago. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But I guess, I don't know. I really don't have anything else to say on this. Do you?
No, maybe we can do an update episode after we watch the documentary or something.
Yeah, because like I said,
I'm sure more will come out. I mean, more comes out every day.
And as far as I know, there's only 2 episodes out of the documentary right now, and there's more to come. Or is the whole thing out already?
Oh, I was under the impression that it was just like one long thing. I didn't realize that there was episodes.
I think there are parts of it. Just basically from what I heard, a lot of people said that, 2 episodes are out, but I also saw somebody say that there was, it was like a 4-part series.
I will say, though, I have to give it to those actors and actresses that did come forward.
Yeah, thank God they did, because it's like,
Well, and not only is it incredibly brave and incredibly empowering, but that had to be really, really, really scary, and I do applaud you for that. Good for you.
So there's 4 episodes out right now, and whether or not there are going to be more episodes that will come out, who knows, because I could definitely see them expanding on this a lot more.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like I said, when I definitely get the opportunity to watch it, I definitely will, add in some stuff. But, again, if you guys want to watch it for yourself, it's on
Netflix?
It is not on Netflix. It is on, going back to overview, you can watch it on Discovery Plus, Fubo TV, Max.
Discovery Plus.
Do we? Maybe we should watch that before we did this episode.
Well, I thought it was on Netflix, so my bad.
Philo, YouTube with a subscription.
But like I said, I've watched pretty much the whole thing on TikTok anyway.
Yeah, there have been plenty of clips that have been uploaded on TikTok, so getting the chance to watch the full thing.
Were you about to say we can watch it on Hulu too?
Yeah, I think it's on Hulu too.
Oh, we don't have Hulu anymore though, do we?
We do not.
No. I can log into my Discovery Plus and we can watch it then.
But any final thoughts on anything?
I hope Dan Schneider and Brian Peck both burn in hell.
I think the same.
And I would very much like to be the one to torture them.
Yeah, you and me both. Like, we'll just be waiting down there. Like, somehow we'll be down there before them and just be like, so, you finally arrived.
I have zero tolerance for people who abuse children.
Yeah, same. It's really shitty. And, like, whether you're somebody like Brian Peck who actually is that fucked up in the head where you're going to actually go through and stuff, or even if you're somebody like Dan Schneider that is just creepy in general. Like,
and here's the
don't
thing.
mess with kids.
We don't have to get into the whole capital punishment debate, but I do strongly believe that child abusers should be put to death.
But I guess with that being said,
And you can fight me on that if you want to, but I will die on that hill.
I guess if you guys have any thoughts, let us know on social medias. Link in the description as always. But I guess with that, we're bringing this episode to a close. Hope you guys are doing positive things out there. You know, be nice to one another. Do all sorts of positive things out there.
Enjoy the weather if you're lucky enough to be in the states that have nice weather right now.
Yeah. Because here in Minnesota, we're about to get a snowstorm this weekend. We may
It's
or may
not
not.
going to
Who
storm.
knows?
It's going to miss us, and everybody's going to be all pissed about it.
Probably. But anyway, I've been Cameron.
I've been Kate.
And as always, we'll see you in the next one. Nerds out.